This is part 3 of my discussion about the reason for the Holocaust. This is turning into a pretty lengthy discussion and pretty lengthy succession of videos. And basically what I was saying when the last video left off was that anytime I would open a discussion, try to talk about the Holocaust as far as reasons were concerned, to anybody, not just Jews, but anybody across the board, they were almost completely unable or unwilling to answer it, and especially if I suggested that it was even within the realm of possibility that God allowed it to happen for some reason, because of some reason, something that Jews had done or hadn't done. That of course was completely off limits. If you said that, you were automatically considered a bigot and a hateful person, an anti-Semitic, idiotic beyond belief. There was just no way you could even suggest that. But when you take all these things aside and you think about them logically. If you think about them logically, like I did and like I still do, removing all emotion from it, which I understand is a difficult thing to do, but especially if you actually know people or have known people who went through that to some extent or another. Gerda had the numbers on her arm just like everybody else. How she was able to get through the checkpoint without the numbers being seen, I don't know. I don't know if she put makeup over the numbers. I don't know how it happened. But if you know somebody, if you know somebody or have known somebody who went through that, who survived that, and it's really hard to discuss it. It's really hard to talk about it, but we can't ignore it. I just don't see how we could ignore it. I think personally, this is just my personal opinion, and I've had some Jewish people argue with me. I've had some not Jewish people argue with me. I've had some, but the point the thing that I believe about the Holocaust is that it is actually the most significant event in human history, and it's not just significant in and of itself. In other words, it's not just significant because it was the largest mass murder ever, which it definitely was. There's never been any larger mass murder than the murder of the Jews. The Christians were murdered, by being thrown to the lions by the Romans and different people. But there's no parallel at all, nothing that comes close to the mass murder of the Jewish people. But it's not just significant in that respect. It's also highly significant and probably the most important event in history because of the underlying implications of it. Okay, so this is the crux of my 3-part video here, and here's what I'm going to ask. And as you saw in the last segment, I am definitely not a Jew hater, at least not in my heart. Now, I may say things that could be construed in that way, or maybe not a hater, but possibly, arrogant or whatever. I suppose there's some things that could be taken out of context, but obviously I don't hate Jews. Most people that hate somebody people that hate somebody usually don't remember a person like that fondly and break out in tears. So I'm obviously not a hater, at least in my heart. Some things I say might seem that way, but they're not really that way. But here's what I want to propose, and if you guys take this as hate, then I guess there's nothing I can do about it. But this is the most, like I said, the most significant event in human history ever, as far as a negative event. Now there are more significant positive events. The crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus, the giving of the law to Moses, the Noahic flood, the deluge that destroyed everybody but 8 people. But as far as negative, on things that are on the negative side, of positive, negative, yin and yang, whatever you want to call it. This is the most significant event in human history as far as I'm concerned. So here's what I want to ask and propose to you. The reasons that I see, as I see it, for the Holocaust, or the possible reasons that I see it for it, are these. Okay, first, number one, the reason for the Holocaust was that God doesn't exist. Now, of course, I'm not willing to concede to that even for a moment, because I know, there's billions of reasons why God exists. I mean, there's just so many things that you can, there's so many reasons, philosophical reasons, logical reasons, scientific reasons that God exists. And so if God doesn't exist, then religions don't make any difference anyway. And there's, so that's really, a reason that I'm not even willing to concede to. But just for the purpose of this video, just to be fair, that's the first reason that I say that the Holocaust might have happened, because God just doesn't exist. And since there's no God, man is allowed to do whatever man wants to do. Man can do anything he wants to do. He can kill, he can steal, he can destroy, and without any influence from God, or being stopped by God or anything. The second possible reason for the Holocaust is that there is a God, but God simply didn't care. Obviously, if God calls Israel his chosen people, many, many, many times over, obviously that's, I don't know. You tell me. You tell me if that's true or not. That God just doesn't care. God just sat back and didn't care, and that's why the Germans were allowed to kill 6 million Jews, plus I think it was 4 million Poles and so many other people, Catholics, and gay people, black people, whatever. So for you got no God. There's either no God, God. There is a God, but he doesn't care. God allowed it to happen because this is one of the things that the rabbi that I talked to said was a possible reason. He said off the record, but I'm going to put it on this record because I think it's something we should discuss. He said one of the possible reasons was that the Jewish people were becoming too comfortable in Europe, and God was angry at them for not returning to making more of an effort to return to their roots, to Israel. I don't know. You tell me if that's a reason. It's not one that I've ever really considered, but that I suppose that's a possible reason, and I threw it in there just because a rabbi said it. So, okay, so you got either there's no God, there is a God, he doesn't care, or the Jews were getting comfortable in Israel or in Europe, and God was mad at them for that. Another possible reason for the Holocaust would be that God allowed his people to suffer to teach something to the world, to teach the world some sort of lesson. Some Jewish people have suggested that Isaiah 53 is not referring to an actual Messiah, a human being that's a Messiah that suffers for sins and so forth, but it's actually referring to the people of Israel, and that could be a reason why the Holocaust happened. Another possible reason could be that God allowed it to happen because the Jews were in some way being disobedient, rejecting something that God felt was absolutely important. They were doing something that was completely non-conducive to their part in the law, their part in the covenant between God and man, and therefore that was a punishment. And he selected a remnant to be saved to continue, but it was definitely some sort of punishment for something that they either had done or hadn't done, and something that they've been either directly disobedient to, like a commandment, or indirectly by not performing something that they were supposed to perform. Those are the only things that I personally can think of, the only possible reasons why